Bing bong.
Hello, this is MP. Today I was gonna draw like a design that will pop in my head, but it's all about My Little Ponies and it's about an apple. So my thought process behind this was trying to create an apple at the center of the viewpoint, then adding three of the characters or six of the characters in the apple and they're observing. Even though it's a speed sketch that takes like 1 hour, I just want to show the story about the apple itself, just so you can create a story and subtlety behind it. So I'm creating the sketch of the characters, particularly the My Little Pony characters. I don't know their names, but I can know the feeling of their characters. But what I'm doing is creating a sketch where there's a foreground, midground, and background. Well, the midground is the most focal point because it's the midground, of course, where we'll see the view or the composition of the Big Apple. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just getting the colors of the apple, trying to get the gist of the sign of the apple, trying to create the shape and the form itself. I added soft shadows, hard shadows, and even shadows that are complementary textures to improve the focal point of the apple. Most important, I did use references for this as a sketch. So I grabbed some photos for 5 minutes, trying to think what's my idea, while using my visual knowledge to understand the scenery of the art. So I'm zooming out, black, and I was actually taking a break. So like it was 30 to 40 minute break. So because I was like eating and I was like taking a nap because I was a little bit tired, so I was resting. So here's the apple. That's all. Oh, that was a long break. Oh my, sorry. Um. Anyways, while I was waking up, um, I drew the foreground. Actually, like the color itself, the one palette that appeals throughout the center of the apple, just to be sure it's much more easier. And I'm adding black edges and using references from, if you see in forms, you could see the orange edges. Then I'm trying to like expound the idea whether or not I should add grass or but it a mellow yellow on the background and the foreground. Then I was adding greens between the background because I was using reference from the My Little Pony of where the Applejack's farm has like a center where there's like apples and stuff. But I added bushes just to make it much more simple for the character. So I added much more details, trying to emphasize the apple much more easily and trying to, think of my mind saying if this is actually good for the viewer to see. So I'm just adding like a lot of designs and a lot of ideas just so I can try to simplify it. And what I've noticed is I try to not zoom in a lot when it comes to art because when you try to zoom in, you're trying to create another portrait, another portrait when you zoom in. It's okay to zoom in if you want to know the details, but it's really important to zoom out sometimes because um, remember most great artists always simplify their paintings. If you look at some artists, it's mostly a blob of paint or splodge um, by um, by one paint stroke. So simplifying it is really important because you cannot make something realistic, but more of a composition artwork that the viewer and the artist can understand. So I'm adding colors between the ponies. So yeah, um, I didn't try to use color theory that well on the values, so it was actually my fault. So I'm like trying my best to just simplify the characters and trying to improve the color or the value of the art itself because I think it's bleeding already. So that's what I'm trying to solve from what I remembered. So I'm experimenting right now by adding shadows between the background or the edges of the art, just so there's luminance between the apple itself, because I want to think about the apple so much. So I'm just testing between the art itself just to know. And I'm adding like exclamation points that fits the character's mood based from the signs. And I added between a background that uses simple brush strokes, especially a hard round brush, of where I could put a focal point of the object itself so the viewer's eyes can go to the apple and at the end of the scene. So I'm looking at references also while looking at the art itself by adding bushes. There I'm adding like the background. This is really common tactic when it comes to concept, where you could just add a black at the foreground just so the viewer can appeal the eye. And I use that stick on the black stick on the top just so it can be pointed from the apple and at the end of the scene, but I'm not done yet. So I'm just testing to see if this fits right. So I added God rays at the center. I used to do this in my art. That's really common because I always think of like, oh, they're in a jungle or something. So maybe I'll add God rays now. So that's what my thought process. It changed over time, and I'm adding more details that emphasize more of the value structure. So I'm trying to make it much more darker in the mid-ground, just so the composition will have clarity. And I'm adding much more just to be sure. And I added much more colors in the apple also, especially just 2 to 3 colors. In tip for coloring also, you could just try to understand the value, but the color must be fit at the same time. No matter how good your colors is, if the value is the problem, then you need to fix it. Then you need to be aware and cautious around the value. So don't do color theory first, but value theory is the most important when it comes to compositioning. So I added much more dark vines just to be sure. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's actually the whole photo. So I could improve it by just adding much more black in the foreground, and at the same time improve the light aspect of the sun and add much more texture in the top. So yeah, this is the photo and this is it. So yeah,